The F-14 from Skymaster continues. Last video we finished off the vertical stabs or rudder surfaces. We're continuing in the back end, working our way forward. So let's dive back in. All right, so from servicing the cylinders here for the main doors, we've got a bunch of little pieces of tubing and stuff in there. So I'm going to vacuum out the entire fuselage. And there's also a bunch of dust in here from the manufacturing process. We've got our lead installed for the canopy hook. And now we're going to start to work on getting our equipment installed. So our rudders are basically finished. This one still isn't fully cured, but it's cured enough where we can hook it up and kind of get things figured out. So we're going to get our servo leads and everything figured out here next. So we're probably going to use an Ashlock locking connector on this guy, and then we'll just use one of our standard servo leads on this guy. We've got the exact same thing on both of our rudders. Now I don't know if these are going to come off during regular transport. I suspect they're probably not. And the other thing I start to do during this phase is the pieces that hold the surfaces in the aircraft, we go through and tighten all those nuts and bolts up. So you'll see on this guy there's some Allen heads there. What I find is those are always loose when they come from the manufacturer. So usually you'll go in there, you'll get probably about half a turn, maybe even more to tighten those guys up. So that's been completed as well. And we can start running things forward. We've got our servo leads done up here, or our light lead anyways, so those will get fastened inside the rudder, and the outputs are near the front of the vertical stab, and you can see them right here. So that line is the front of that pocket, and the pocket sits back here. We've got our rudder in the front, our light in the back. We're going to label those guys. And the way I do my aircraft is I always do the same thing. Signal center or signal forward. So that's why we see our white leads or signal or positive or whatever towards the center line of the aircraft. If we had those shifted around, they would be pointing forward. So if that does ever wear off, we know that it's signal center, signal forward. So those guys are installed on both sides, ready to go. And other than painting our little high sol areas black, those rudders are ready to be installed. All right, so we're ready to put our rudders on. We've got them plugged in. They're a little bit of shoe goop on those connectors. We've got our holder in there. We've got the holder shoe gooped. We've got Loctite on our bolt and ready to install this guy. So there's a pinch bolt on the back that holds the carbon rod, and then there's an Allen key bolt that screws in to the fuselage. So getting this guy on should be pretty straightforward. I left those leads hopefully long enough. If not, we can hold them a little bit longer. All right, so we've got both vertical stabs installed, and now we'll put our front bolt in, of course, with some Loctite. So big step accomplished with these guys, getting them installed. Definitely feels good to have this step done. All right, guys, so next thing we're moving on to is our elevator servos. So these pockets are nice and tight. I don't think this is gonna fit in here. It's really close. So we need to just open up the center bottom portion where our cable needs to sit. So I'll just take my Dremel and just sand that down just a little bit, but you want this to be nice and tight. Now, when you do the elevators on a Skymaster plane like this, you want your servo output shaft to be right in line with the pivot point. There'll be a pocket sitting right in this area here on the actual elevator. These are a quick release system. The button's right down here. So you push this up, elevator slides in, the bearings stick out from the arm. We'll take a look at that. And they engage with the elevators. So that's what we're doing to get those installed. Now just taking a look at the pocket all the way around, so it is the right size. We just need a center cutout there for the wire. All right, so with that done, this should slip in. Now I'd like to not install my extension until we have the servo completely installed, and the reason for that is we need to be able to center the servo to get it in place. Okay, so we need to open that up just a little bit on the top. There we go. So nice and tight. The nice thing about using MKS servos or a variant that's exactly the same size is the Skymaster servos are MKS servos, so they tend to fit everything just perfectly. So that's done. We're going to get that screwed in. We'll make sure this is nice and solid when we screw these guys in using CA on the holes and everything. And then we'll take a look at the next step, which is our servo arm. Now, generally I've found with these MKS servos, the servo spacing and everything is pretty much perfect. We'll grab our servo arm and put it on there just to check and make sure that we're good. So you pretty much want to make sure you're using the stock arms. They work just basically perfect. So this is the setup here. I have made these before for other servos, but I think when you order the kits, you have to determine whether you want F for Futaba or a JR spline. But usually with these guys, when you put them on, they fit really well. Now in this case, we actually need to space this out because it's sitting out not very good. So we're gonna have to put some spacers around that servo. We do have some made up. Interesting. I don't remember doing that on the last one, but we'll get some spacers out and see what we need to do. All right, so we took some of our wooden spacers that I make up. These we cut out with a laser machine and cut the surrounding area off because there's not enough room for these side pieces. And I just tack those on with some CA. So these are sanded down on the sides, and I just test fit this, and this actually ends up being the perfect spacing. So the servo arm is not attached for the final time because you have to put your cover plate on, but we've got the servo arm just put on so it gives us our spacing. And you want to get this as close as possible to the fuselage. So on this right hand side, this tip actually rubs a little bit on the fuselage. If you have it spaced out too much, this arm contacts the actual elevator surface and it ends up being an issue. So we'll get this screwed in and I'll show you guys what the spacing looks like. All right, so we've got our servo bolted in place, and this is just the test right now, so nothing's been done. You can see there we are rubbing on the fuselage, which isn't a terrible thing. It's close. What I'll probably end up doing is I'm going to add a little bit of an additional spacer behind that servo just to get it skewed out a little bit. So we'll do that, and as long as we're happy with everything, we'll get that servo mounted. All right, so we've got the servo installed for the last time, and you can probably see the space there. So we've got maybe 1 millimeter, which is exactly what we're looking for. So we want that to be, like I said, as tight as possible. That's snug. So there we go. So we can take the servo arm off. Now we need to install our cover plates, and we need to have a hole big enough to install this servo arm back onto the servo. All right, guys, so with the servo mounted, we're ready to get our cover plate installed. Now these cover plates usually fit pretty good. These ones seem like they're a little bit thick, which should be okay. And you do normally have to do some final sanding to them. But so what I do in this case is we're going to take our Sharpie and we're going to draw our horizontal mark. And then we'll get it set up like this. Draw our vertical mark. That gives us our center point. So what I'll do now is just take my step drill and drill this guy out. Obviously it needs to be a little bit bigger than the base of the servo, so we'll go fairly large on the hole because it's all hidden anyways, and you want to have free movement in here. And then you also need to be able to access those screws to get these guys tightened up as well too. So I'll get this drilled out, we'll come back and take a look. All right, so little tips here on shaping this cover plate. So it was pretty thick G10, so I took it to our belt sander over here and made it a little bit thinner so it wasn't quite so crazy. And we got the outside shaped so it fit really well. Used my step drill to drill out the hole for the actual servo arm itself. And then the last thing was drill 1/16 holes here, and then we use a countersink bit to make little indents for our screws. So we'll check how this fits, and then if everything's good, we'll use the 1/16 drill bit to drill holes into the fuselage, and then use our tiny little black screws to get this mounted. All right, so fit-wise, there we go. We got a nice fit, looks good. And then you can see here, we're not much bigger than the servo, but that is perfect as far as positioning and everything goes. So yeah, it looks good. So we'll get that screwed and mounted in place. And then what we are gonna do is we're gonna plug in our servo arm, our servo, to the electronics to get it centered so we can get that guy mounted. All right, so from experience, what I will do in this case is we are going to get our plate drilled out first, at least one of these spots. But if you can keep it lined up and do all of them, then even better. Now you don't want to mount the plate yet because you need access to the servo. So you want to leave this plate loose so you can spin it around and get access to these screws. And then once the arm is attached, then I'll screw the plate down to the fuselage. So we'll get our receiver set up here and plug the servo lead into our central box. All right, so we've got our servo plugged in, and we want to get this guy set up. Now we'll check our servo again as well and make sure we're good with everything, but we want to make sure our neutral is in the right spot basically. So if we take the elevator here, we don't have our slot in there yet, but our elevator is going to have a little bit of natural up built into it like this. So without our little receiver portion in the elevator, that's our movement. So our midpoint is about here. So when I look at this, what I'm looking at is our line is not perfectly horizontal with the fuselage. We're in the front end down just a little bit, which is good. Now so what I'm going to double check is make sure that we don't have any weird sub trims in here. So now this is, the way this program works is we've got the tails listed as ailerons. That's just the way it is. They're listed as ailerons. And you can see our spoilers, which are on the top of the wings. They operate a little bit as well too. So the ailerons are done that way. We've got a mix for elevons or elevators as well too. So all that's mixed in already previously. So we'll go into our model servo setup. So aileron 1, we've got no weird mixes or trims or anything like that going on there. And that's good. So everything's good with that. We'll get our servo arm screwed down, and then we will screw down our cover plate. All right, and then so now that we've got everything kind of sorted out, so before we screw this down, I will put some Loctite on our screws, our set screws here, just so we don't have to deal with that after. So we'll just pull these guys out. Of course, not screwing them down all the way, but just getting our Loctite pre-done on them. Now this is such a critical portion of any of these SkyMaster planes with no linkages on the tail section. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to make sure you use Loctite on all these things and to make sure that everything is snug down tight. Okay, so our set screws also Loctited as well. So all that's ready to get installed. So we'll pop this guy on, do our outside screw first. Now I do have a process for this. So I like to do my outside screw, get everything sunk down nicely, and then we'll do our screw on the back side first to clamp everything off. So it's nice and tight. And then we'll do our other screw on the other side. And this is why you need to leave that cover plate loose, because you need to be able to access these things. So that's done, and then I'll come back and just snug down our outside set screw. So that is done, and that's how we get it installed. I think we may have a little bit of interference here with the cutout. Just grab the radio and we'll hold it in this spot and see if it moves the cover plate. Okay, so get that lined up, and no, I think we're probably okay. The back of the servo arm does contact the plate a little bit when we go this way. But that's just contact with here, not the actual opening. So we're good with that. We'll screw this guy down, and this right-hand side is finished. All right, so now we're ready to hook up our servo lead, but I'll show you guys one little thing here and why this is so critical to get these servo arms mounted as close as possible. So if we were to space this arm out even any more than how tight we got it here, so we're actually can probably fit a piece of paper in between the tip right there, so we're almost touching. But it's important because if you have those arms sticking out, then you have to start sanding out massive areas of the horizontal stab or the tail section. So I had to do a little bit of sanding right here to let that arm clear, but we don't have to do any more beyond that. So I have seen planes that guys have put together where they've had those servo arms spaced out and have to chop massive areas of these guys out. Now, of course, that does come down to where SkyMaster spaces these things out, but generally this is kind of the norm here. So we're tight, everything's good on this side. We're going to repeat all of this on the other side. And the last step with this one side is we're going to get our lead attached. So watching polarity, of course, we will put our foil tape on there. Now, I talk about this all the time, but if you're new here, I will mention it again. I don't like to have the servo leads as part of your distance. So what I'll do in this case is bundle up the servo lead with a zip tie, and it's called a service loop. So if you ever have to take this servo out, you take the servo out, you've got the lead, you've got the connector all right here, so it doesn't become a pain to try and fish it out from way down the fuselage. So we'll add a service loop to this, and then we'll run this wire forward, and we will work on getting these wires run well once we get the tail section done. All right, so tail servos have been installed. This one was a little bit of a challenge on this side. The reason for that was the pocket that the receiver portion sat in was crooked. It was probably off about 10 degrees, so I had to actually do some sanding in that pocket so the little receiver portion would sit flat. Not really a big deal. I've run across it before, but it's just one of those things to pay attention to. So this side here, it wouldn't go on either side, and then when you held a straight edge against that receiver portion, you could see that it was off. So anyways, not a big deal, it's done. We're gonna get our wire hooked up on this side, and we will get that kind of tossed forward as well. All right, so our servo leads have been added on everything. We've got snakeskin or sheathing installed on them all, and the sheathing is long enough so it essentially stops right after the fuse joint. So those are all the leads from the back end. We still have to run our leads from the afterburner lights here. So I'm going to make a joint or a split, and they're going to sit right inside here. Now the reason you want those splits is to get the tailpipes in, you have to put the tailpipes through the back end, then put the cone on, get that locked in place. So that's kind of a process, and we'll have the controller sitting here. We'll run our leads to the back to the appropriate locations, but we won't put those pipes in for a little bit. So there's definitely a process to this back end of this aircraft. So next step is running all these leads forward. We're going to do it in a obviously organized manner, but they're all going to come to the center portion and go forward. Now I've seen people use the foil tape, like the stuff that we use to hold the servo leads together. Now that's okay. I kind of don't like using that anymore. I just try and make airspace. So if the wire has an inch or two or more away from the outer wall of the pipe, you're good. There's lots of airflow in there. Obviously, if it gets closer, you probably want to use the foil tape. But if we're using the foil tape, you have to make sure you glue it down with something. So I'll usually take some goop, put it on my finger, and just run it on the edges of the foil tape. And that helps to hold it down permanently unless there's a reason in the future you want it to be taken off. So if you don't do that, the foil tape will come off. All right, a little more update for you here. So I've got the wires all taken care of in the back end of both planes. So we've used some various keepers and stuff to get those guys out of the way. So I put the cones on, measured the amount that we need to go in here to put the connectors in, and that is this guy right here. So we're going to put just a simple servo connector on this side, and we will route these guys and see where we can get to as far as distance to the controller, and then we'll just have a servo connector installed on this end and this end. They'll plug together. Ultimately, when these run forward, we just need to mark them right. So there'll be 2 of these white connectors right and 2 of them left. Reason for that is with the afterburner setup from Unilite, you've got a main and a boost. So one of the connections needs to go main. So for example, right will have 2 connections. One will go to main, one will go to boost. And same thing on the left side. So as long as we've got them marked left and right, that'll be fine. So we'll have this guy sitting right in this area, but on the other side of the aircraft. So this is the side that's going to open up where we put all the starting stuff, fuel fill, all that stuff is going to be on this side. So I'll have this guy mounted on the other side. All right, so here's a layout of the connectors and turkey feathers and afterburner lights and everything. So we've got our connectors done on the afterburner lights. This is our lead that goes from the lights to the controller, and there's the wiring done up in the fuselage. So this is the lead going to the controller. We've got our joint right here, another clip there to hold the leads as they come off the afterburner. So with this in place, that's our last wire to run. So what we'll do in this case now is we can lay our pipe in there. We can get our afterburners installed and get them plugged into the light controller here. I think that's what we're going to do. We may have to play around a little bit with stuff for the engine mounting, but that's kind of the last little bit to go in this back end. Everything else is from here forward. All right, so working on getting things lined up here. So I think this actually says it in the manual. I believe we had to do it previously as well, but the mounting ears for the turbines are make this quite an issue to get these turbines in here. Doesn't matter which one you go with unless you go with something tiny. So we'll have to chop those guys down a little bit as well too. Pretty common. Just take a Dremel fiber disc and you cut off the outer holes. So that's fine. And one of the other things we need to deal with is, if you look in there, I think I can show you. So that rod right in the middle, coming down from the rudder, is actually getting in the way. So right now it's contacting the outer wall of the pipe. And if you look there, the pipe is touching the bottom and we've got a big space on top. So if I try and bring that pipe up, it's actually contacting the inner wall now. So we need to chop those carbon fiber rods coming from the rudder surface down. So this is all part of the fitment. You don't want to do anything permanent at this point because you're going to be taking stuff in and out and in and out. All right, so with our tabs trimmed down a little bit on the turbines, this fits absolutely perfect. So the spacing between the nuts is 100% perfect. There is zero play side to side. Why that's cool is that actually gets it completely centered. We've got no side to side ability. So hopefully everything lines up, but that's great. So what I'll do now is, in order to get our pipe spacing set properly, our end of our pipe is sitting back here, right? So in order to get our pipe spaced properly, what we want to do is, or what I will do is take this rail out. The rail is removable. We will put the pipe on the end of the rail. I'll show you guys here in a second, but then we'll be able to line that up outside the aircraft and just put a little mark there. Now, hopefully we are no further back than those locations right there. We can chop that former down just a little bit to allow the turbine to slide back more. But from memory, I think the last one we built had Jetsmun's 210s in it, and I think those were skewed kind of forward like that anyways. So we'll pull this out and we will show you. All right, so this is how we'll do it. So we've got the right pipe on the top. This is the inner rail. We're gonna sit like this. And with this type of setup, with the bell mouth being a small bell mouth, we basically want 25 to 30 millimeters. Let's grab a clamp and make our life easier. So we want 25 to 30 millimeters between the end of that pipe and our exhaust cone. We want to have roughly 25 to 30 millimeters there between those items. So grab our ruler. So start of the actual pipe to the tip of the exhaust cone, we are 30 millimeters right there. So that is exactly where we want to have that, that turbine lined up. So if we take a look at everything, so we can skew that in a little bit more. I want to try and get that 25 number, which is right there. Okay, so now taking a look at this, I know that when I put this turbine in the airframe on this side at least, the other one may change, but it should be very similar. We want to be just on the inside of that screw, which is great because that means our former, which I was just pointing out, is sitting right there. So we're almost butting up right against that former. So we're tucked against the nuts. I'll just draw a line right here. So we've got our line figured out like that. Perfection. All right, so we've got rail installed, we've got pipe installed, just sitting there. We've got turbine just sitting there, and we are checking alignment here. And I think we are going to be very happy with this alignment. So the tail cone is what holds the pipe in place, so it can flop up and down right now. But if we take that pipe and kind of center it, look down the pipe, bang on perfection. That is awesome. Everything just comes right into alignment. That is stellar. So good, so good. So with that, what we will do now is we'll pull this pipe out. We've got to treat all of our cable holders in the back end here with a little bit of goop. So we just take a bit of goop on my finger, wipe it on the edge of the cable holders, and then we're ready to put this pipe in. We still have to do all the same stuff to that side, but at least now we kind of have the alignment plan and everything. So that is awesome. Very happy. All right, so we've got both of our tails installed, our turkey feathers, pipes, and the turbines are sitting in their little homes, and we need to put our screws through the turbine. Now, we can't put the turbines in yet because we have to get our intake pieces installed. Can't put the intake pieces in yet till we get our tanks installed. So this is all part of the assembly system, but I'm going to get our screws done up just so we can check our position of our turbines. And then we'll take those screws out, take the turbines out, get the rest of the stuff installed, and then come back to the turbines. All right, so we're at that point now where we have to get our tanks installed for everything else to go in this area. So that's going to be the next thing that we queue up here. Now, we do have a bunch of our leads going right in the U part or peak of the fuselage. So I think we'll be able to maybe run some other stuff there, but we do have like our lighting control stuff to run forward. We've got our turbine cables to run forward. And so that's some of the stuff we'll have to get done up here as well. But in the meantime, we can clean out our tanks, get our clunk lines done, get everything hooked up, and then we can pressure these guys up to at least pressure test them and make sure that there's no leaks in them. So first thing we'll do is we'll grab some rubbing alcohol. All right, and the rubbing alcohol is what we use to clean out our tanks. The nice thing about it is you can just dump it out in the trash and it evaporates. So it's really not caustic or toxic or anything like that. So we will dump some rubbing alcohol into each tank, swish it around, dump a little bit more into each tank, swish it around, and that just helps to make sure that we get rid of all of the little crusties and little floaties that are floating around in those tanks. So I'll just give it a shake. And usually, if you look down in the bottom corner, you can see all of the cruds that come out with it. So yeah, we'll clean out all these tanks and then we will get the clunk lines ready. So in all of the tanks, we'll be using a rigid tube in the center. So here's an example of a clunk without a rigid tube. And in this case, we will cut a section of this out and we'll have a rigid tube installed. So in our smaller tanks, I guess, we'll use a smaller piece of rigid tube. And in the main tank over here, we'll use bigger rigid tubes. Now, the tubes themselves are quite a bit different than what comes in the kit. So this is the one in the kit. It's pretty tiny. It actually fits inside of the larger tube that we're using. So substantially different if you use the stock hardware and stuff, so which we're not using. So anyways, we will get these clunks all set up and ready to go. Now, one little tip here for you on some of these guys, when you get them, they're very tough to do tie wraps or safety wire on the fitting like this because it's inset. So all you do in this case is you put another piece of tube over top of your tube, so a little clipping, and then when you push it on, there's like a second wrap holding that all together. Works very well, and a nice simple way to add a little additional connection holder on those guys. So when we do this, we want to make sure these tanks the clunk lines are the same for both tanks. That way you're pulling and filling closer to the same rate. All right, so here's the finished clunk line, and everything worked out good. So we're nice and flexible but rigid where this won't fold back over itself. So before we put these together, I want to put a little bit of silicone lubricant on the O-ring. Now you don't want to use Loctite on the threads or anything like that. The O-ring is your seal. So you just put a little bit of lubricant on the O-ring, and when we tighten this guy up, the O-ring will be our seal. Now this tank design is a little bit of a pain in the butt because of the closed off section there, but we will make it work and get that guy tight. So when we do tighten this up, we just want to make sure that we're getting it fairly snug. So in this case, because we don't have access to the outside perimeter of that, we will use our center portion there. It is just aluminum, so we want to be careful. Okay, so we're nice and snug. And we can also take this and just give it a little twist like that. Perfect. Awesome, so that should be good. This felt like it was tightening up. So with that done, now we'll put a closed tube on one side, an open tube on the other side. We'll blow into it with our mouth and we'll seal this guy off and check and make sure after a few hours that it holds pressure. All right, so when I'm doing this, I like to put the pressure through the vent line. The reason for that is if you put it through the clunk line and you let this blow into your mouth and there's alcohol left over in the tank, some of that residual can come into your mouth and it's not a lot of fun. So all we need to do is we've got one end of the Tygon tubing closed off there. It's been heated up and closed off. And then this side here, we'll just blow into it with our mouth, pressurize this guy, and then clamp it off. There we go. So with a little bit of saliva, I'll just check our ends here and make sure we're not leaking. Perfect. Now we can do this a couple different ways. We can just leave it like it is. You can also take a little bit of soapy water right now and just spray the fittings, and at least that'll let you know if your fittings are leaking. So we'll do that, but we can feel the pressure in there. No obvious quick leaks because I don't hear any hissing. So if we come back in 8 hours, 2 hours, whatever it is, and this still has pressure in it, we know that everything is good. All right, guys, well, it's been about 10 hours and we still have pressure in these tanks, which is nice. So just to confirm, the Tygon will usually get kind of stuck together. So that released pressure and that released pressure. So that's good. If it holds pressure for an hour, it's great. If it holds pressure for 10 hours, it's even more great. So main saddle tanks or rear saddle tanks are good to go. We'll do the same thing on the main. We wanted to get these guys done because we have to get them installed before we install all the other stuff. So these things get the thumbs up. All right, so with the tanks done, guys, we need to get some fuel tubing attached to the tanks in order to get them installed in the fuselage. Now, the reason for that is when this tank tucks in place, we really don't have any access to the vent fitting or the front fitting here as well, too. So if we follow the path for this, we've talked about this already. So we will be filling up the front tank from the bung fittings, and the fuel will come out of the vent lines and go to the bung fittings of the back tanks. And then these vent lines are going to come forward to our vent going to the outside of the fuselage, which is going to be right in this area here. So when we put our predetermined lines on here, we're going to make sure that we've got enough space to go all the way forward and down. We're going to make these lines exactly the same length. And then these lines here, they're going to come beside the tank and tuck up like this. So we're going to make these lines excessively long, and then when we actually go to install the front tank, what we do is if we cut this much off of one side, we cut the exact same off of the other side. So that's the installation process for the tanks. But the tanks being ready to install does bring us to the end of video 3 in the SkyMaster normal F-14 series. It's been a fun one so far. It's an interesting challenge to go through everything one more time, and it's been awesome. So thank you, channel members, for supporting the channel. And if you're watching this and wondering what channel membership is, there's some links down below to channel membership. But to give you the basic outline, channel membership's a paid thing, but channel members get access to our videos early. So during this build series of the F-14, we're usually about a week to 2 weeks ahead on videos, and channel members get to see all of that early. We just had 3 beautiful boxes show up for unboxing. Channel members get access to all those videos early as well too. So lots of cool things to channel membership, and wintertime is really when it gets busy. So thank you, channel members, for that. Thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel. Keep an eye out for video number 4 in the series, and we'll see you in the next video.